Alright, this is my, what I call the Ailment Enjoyer build. It's an ailment stacking build using one of the new grafts, the Grey Wind Howls graft, in order to get a nice extra, like 240% physical damage as extra elemental damage. So if you notice in the corner there, I'm stacking nearly all of the elemental ailments, and when the Grey Wind Howl buff triggers, it turns all those ailments into extra damage for me. And then taking advantage of that with Tornado skill. And once we're out of the map, I'll explain how all those ailments work. Another fun thing with this build is getting a nice little freeze aura there. As you can see, bosses not able to do too much when they're frozen. So I've got elemental proliferation all around me with all of those ailments. And the right side of the track. So yeah, very fast, snappy build. And a very cool mechanic that I haven't seen anywhere else. So yeah, the grafts are actually quite easy to get a hand of. So this build, I think is one of the first I've seen that actually uses self-freeze effectively. And it's a very cool effect to have a nice little freezing aura around you at all times, as well as having all those ailments give you a nice damage boosts. I think the graft really makes the self-ailment, ailment reflect viable to be able to stack it up. Let's see, can I get a boss? Hey, we get the boss. So, boss doesn't do much. And that's still not getting a lot of blood. Anyway. So yeah, let's hop out of the map. And I'll explain all the mechanics here, because this build has just completely consumed my life for like the last week, playing around with all the different ways to make this thing work. But this is the key. So if you want to play with this yourself, you can grab one of these for pretty cheap and grab a Fulcrum. So Fulcrum is how I'm reflecting the ailments back to me. And then this has a buff that lasts for 8 seconds and the cooldown's 8 seconds. So when you get an ailment, so you can see the buff goes on. While the buff is up, I can stack up ailments. The Hydra Spear, I can't get all of them, and then the buff expires and consumes those ailments to then give you the buff. So it expires and then these go away. So when you're mapping, there's that, a couple ticks where the buff goes away, it eats your new ones, and you get a new buff. In the hideout, the Hydra Spear only lets me get the cold and shocked, but then, as you saw on the map, we're also getting Ignite and Scorch as well. So yeah, how's all this working? To get Scorch, that's why I'm using Tornado and the new unique ring here. So the prismatic skills always Scorch, and Tornado, the LA Tornado here is a prismatic skill. So very cool ring, kind of weird, it only works with like 5 skills, but it works great with the Tornado here to give me the Scorch. It's also, I was able to get a good crit stack on this, going with Brittle. So to get the Brittle, I'm using somewhere in here, yeah, Sublime Vision here. So using the Hatred Aura to get the Brittle effect here. So that gets the Brittle there, and then the other effects are pretty easy just with the getting crit chance. So once we get Brittle, that puts a nice 6% crit, and then power charges And then also using the new Ferrule Ascendancy here for the Tigers here, which give like 125% crit chance and a good amount of cast speed. This Ascendancy is actually very nice for the Juggernaut setup here because it gives stuff that you can't get anywhere else on the Juggernaut. So yeah, that gives me all my ailments. And then in the links here, a key thing to make this work is then the elemental proliferation. So all the ailments that get reflected with the Fulcrum then also proliferate. So that includes the freeze and then the scorch and all the other ones. And so yeah, that kind of gives you that aura around you. It gives you the freeze aura around you, and as well as everything else is up. So you can. They used to use this staff in the past for like ignite builds, where you get a big ignite and proliferate around like a kind of RF thing. Same idea here, but you're getting all of your ailments. All right, so that's how I'm stacking up all the ailments. How am I actually like dealing with the ailments on myself, because the ailments do have downsides. First thing is with the impulses here. This gives unaffected by shock, and also gives us the shock explode, which is very nice. For the scorch isn't too bad because that's just minus resists, so you just overcap the resists enough so that you have enough when you have the minus 30. You're still capped resist. That's not too bad. For the freeze, that's what the Juggernaut's for. For the action speed cannot be lowered, so the freeze essentially doesn't have any effect, and I can't have an action speed modifier below 0. What else we got for ignite? Since we're Marauder, we can steal the node from the Chieftain to give us unaffected by ignite, and this is also quite handy to help with capping resist as well for the extra resists from your fire resist. What else we got for the chill? The chill is the same as the freeze. The action speed can't be lowered. And then yeah, for the brittle, so when we have brittle on us, we can get crit more, and then just using the reduced extra damage from the tree to deal with that. So you get it from these masteries, this node here, and then the crit node here gives you, I think actually it's like 110% reduced extra damage. You only need 100%, and so that we're crit immune. So it's also very convenient, so any sort of crit mods on maps don't matter. You're immune to crit. And yeah, so that's how we deal with all the ailments on ourselves. So yeah, other items in this build, at least the way I've got it set up now. Yoke of Suffering is a pretty substantial damage boost. It's basically, since we've got 6 different ailments, it's a 60% increased damage on the enemies, and that's additive with the shock, which the shock can usually be pretty hefty as well, because all our elemental damage can shock. For damage, I ended up going for the brutal charges here with Ralakesh. Nothing new here with this setup, but it works very well with the Juggernaut, getting I think I have 7 brutal charges, and then still getting the defenses from the boots. These boots also are really great for Corrupted Blood, immune, and then just having the endurance charges up 100%, because there is a slight ramp time to get your defenses up with the frozen defense. So having, or even just like before Ralakesh, if generating charges can take a minute, so having endurance charges up 100% of the time is super great. Other gear, these are just basically tree rares. This came out of the tree. This came out of the, well, I think I bought this for like 5C, but I'm pretty sure it came out of somebody else's tree. Just getting a little bit of armor defense as much as we can. And we're stacking armor because using the self-freeze ring here, and are actually able to use this pretty effectively because of can maintain our frozen with the Hydro Spear. So this is a pretty old tech as well, but as I've been building this, I eventually found this where the ailments you afflict on the spear are reflected to you. So this is a way to kind of keep this frozen up most of the time. So that makes this ring actually pretty viable to give us a nice chunk of armor. So I was able to snipe this one. This ring with these corruptions varies in price quite a lot because it's kind of rare and not really in demand, but I think I got this for like a divine. But right now on trade they can be any amount of price, and frankly the poison and bleeding aren't too big of a deal, but when you run into it, it's handy to have. And then using the catalyst to hopefully get 20% eventually, but if you can get up to another 6,000 armor, is pretty nice and basically compensates for having a chest here that isn't doing much for us. So other things, the one thing with using Fulcrum, we can't really get level scaling on the gem, so getting the corruption here with +2, the ultimate would be a +2 AoE, and then either a +1 as the second one or a +2 duration would work. But those are very, very expensive, so I'm very happy with just getting a +2 like this. And then links for the gem here are the Empower to get more gem levels, crit damage, the Conk effect, the Prolift, like we talked about, very important. And then I eventually went LE penetration. The like unbound ailments can do a little bit, but it's, since you're not really scaling the Ignite, I think the penetration's a bit better since this is more hit based in this setup. Yeah, other than that, flask wise, basically going for just the elemental flasks and an armor flask. The writhing jar, the worm flask, I don't use this as much as I used to once I figured out or found the hydrosphere tech. But the jar also, when you hit these worms, we can see we can stack up our ailments from the worms. So this can be useful for like single targets where it's like you go into the boss arena and there's no ads and it's just the boss one-on-one. Hitting the worms can give you the ailment effect you want, but it's not super necessary, and the hydrosphere is more important for maintaining the freeze for the armor uptime there. And it's also not a terrible like life flask, just to when you do go down in life, you get your life back with that. Other gems, the Holy Flame Totem. This is just sort of personal preference. I think a lot of people would probably go Penance Brand because Penance Brand will also give you, is a physical spell, so it'll benefit from this. But I like the Flame Totem just for the consecrated ground around it as well. There's not a lot of regen in this build. Most all of my recovery is coming from the cold leech here on the gloves. So having a little extra regen, and then the damage isn't too bad either with the nice 6-link setup. And the totems don't die. The regen affects the totems as well. I haven't had any problem with these dying, so they're a nice little way to give both a little extra damage, a little extra defense, and then the range as well, right? So you can... the tornadoes always spawn kind of right in front of you and have to move out. So if you've got something way in the distance, the totems themselves have good range, and then you can also kind of position them farther off, which is handy. So for the totem links, multiple totems, infused channeling, crit damage, awakened elemental focus, because I'm not really worried about the totems doing any ailments, so LA focus is great. And then faster casting is a nice multiplier since this is so fast to begin with. Other gems I'm using, just Frostblink to get around is handy, and faster casting Spell Echo to make that a little more snappy. Then with the Hydrospear, like I mentioned before, the Hydrospear is useful for maintaining your ailment uptime, particularly the freeze ailment uptime. I'm using level 1. I think you could level up it a little bit. I haven't tested it, but the higher level ones you won't get the full like brittle effect, and with the lower level one you're just guaranteed to get a full brittle effect, and I assume a full shock effect as well. I don't know why the shock doesn't give you the percentage, but the with a higher level one, it's sort of like acts like it has more health and doesn't give you the full effect. So I just keep it level 1, and then as well linking in the curse on hit to not have to worry about cursing as well. So the Hydro Spears is a nice little handy utility spell for cursing and the frozen uptime. And then finally up here, using the automation Molten Shell setup, and then our Hatred on the Eternal Blessing, since I am blood magic for this setup, and we only need the Hatred aura, so that's all the gems. Alright, now to take a look at the tree. I am the Juggernaut here, mainly to get the action speed immunity, but then also getting the endurance charge stacking here as well. It's quite nice. I did go Divine Flesh. I don't think it's doing a ton of work here defensively, but it is nice to help get chaos resistance, and with async trade, actually being able to buy good timeless jewels is so much better, so nice. This was only a divine to grab this jewel, and it's got great nodes here, and then I think I've also got a little, some more chaos nodes along the way. So this is more for like delving stuff, but not entirely necessary. And then the rest of the tree, the key things is to get the crit immunity from the nodes here, and then endurance charge, and then life and armor, blood magic down here to actually cast the spells. And then I am going block. I'm not quite block capped. I'm like 70% block, like attack and spell block, getting the staff block nodes here, and then getting these nice crit nodes, increased defenses, a little extra exposure, the increased elemental damage here, because we are scaling, we're not scaling any particular element, we're using all the elements together, so just generic elemental damage is the way to go. And then up this way, more life, more block. This rune graph, kind of testing this out, and I've turned it off and on, and it's okay. It does, you do notice it a little bit, but it's hasn't really like saved me from dying that often, so probably better just to put it into some more life nodes. And eventually, like you can see here, I want to get another cluster jewel, and maybe move some of the crit nodes up there, or especially the dexterity. Dexterity is like really probably the biggest problem with this build to solve, is getting the dexterity requirements. So for right now, just putting in another reckless defense there for more block. Up at the top, getting the power charges, some more life, and then the block. And then of course, if you're going to be self-casting, you just got to take the chest opening node. Once you play with this node, it's hard to turn it off. But yeah, of course, that's if you need the power, you can always repurpose that node. For the jewels, some very important things with the jewels is the exposure, corrosive elements. I've had my eye on this node for a long time, and I finally get the benefits out of every line on this node for applying all 3 exposures on hit from the tornado. But the key thing here for the power charge is this node, Storm Rider. When you gain a power charge, when you shock a chilled enemy, you're shocking chilled enemies like all the time, so you basically have 100% uptime on your power charges without any issue. And then the increased damage against shocked and chilled enemies is a nice benefit as well. And then, I forgot to mention also the Prism Watcher's Eye here for the base crit chance, along with the Sublime Vision for the brittle, so that's a nice little combo there. And then, getting the Forbidden Flesh and Flame. And then, right now I'm using the Reckless Defense, since the increase crit chance against you doesn't matter, since we're crit immune, and gives us a nice chunk of block chance here and there. And that is the passive tree. Oh, there actually is one little special thing with the tree. This is like super putting them in min-maxing, but this Yoke of Suffering, it's not elemental ailment, it's any ailment, including like bleed and poison. So this poison on hit plus the chaos damage to spells here on the helmet gives us, for like super tanky things that, stand there for a minute, this can actually poison them and you get, another 10% increased damage, which, with diminishing returns, we're going from like 110 increased damage to 120 increased damage. Woohoo. But, it's pretty cheap and easy, so it's fun to do. Technically, you could do bleed as well. I've thought about testing out I think Vol Double Strike would be the only real way to do it easily, instead of this Enduring Cry, which isn't really doing anything. So, but again, you're really up against diminishing returns at that point. So that is the tree. With the Pantheons, damage over time is probably the biggest weakness with this build. Like Shaper Beams, the Mana Donuts, and like in Delve, the cold dot ground that has no visual indication. You just see your life draining down. So you can go this. Sometimes, or for a while, I was also using Lunaris is handy as well for a little damage reduction. The movement speed is nice, but I've ended up going for the Arakali here. And I don't have the debuffs expire faster on me because I want to maintain those debuffs for a long time. But the other three mods are pretty nice. And then Unaffected by Burning Ground is kind of necessary in PoE today. I feel like you just have to do this. Burning Ground just pops up all over the place, and unless you're a Giga Regen build, it's super annoying. And then ironically, the 60% less duration of Ignite isn't like great, but it doesn't hurt anything with the ailment uptime for the build. I guess the only other thing I'm using is the Heart of Flame. This isn't anything special. A lot of people have been using the Heart of Flame here, and I am trying to stack it with the Molten Shell automation. I think the way the timing works is right, or maybe it's not. It seems fine to me. But yeah, getting a decent one of these with cooldown. I actually got lucky with this. This one dropped for me, so yeah, I didn't have any problem getting one of these. But an extra graph for defense. You can also go, I think do I still have the Stillness around here? Yeah, the Preserving Stillness is a decent one as well, and this one basically have 100% uptime on this. Well, outside of the cooldown, so maybe not 100%, but the whenever you apply exposure, and you're constantly applying exposure, so this little buff is up all the time. But it's only against elemental damage, and I'm already pretty good with elemental damage with the flasks and all that jazz. So swapped over to the Heart of Flame just for generic overall damage reduction, and is quite nice. Other stuff I've tried, you can try like these other physical spells do work and are kind of interesting. So if you've ever, if you really want to play like a Divine Ire or a Glacial Cascade, since these are like phys-based spells, the buff here will apply to them as well. The only thing that's going to be trickier to get is going to be like the Scorch, but it's kind of crazy to say, but you're sort of in the diminishing returns of gained as extra damage, which is kind of wild. But so there is a world where you say, hey, I'm not going to worry about the Scorch Ring, and I'm going to play Divine Ire instead, and get all those same benefits from the Fulcrum Staff and whatnot. So yeah, this build's been really solid. It's gotten me through most of all of the campaign stuff here. Still need to do the Feared and the memory lines, but those will come around eventually. But other than that, got all the other slots open, finished the map, finished the Atlas. I have Delve down to just hit 500 on Delve, and it's been great there. So yeah, it's super fun to build around this this graft, and right now the graft is pretty easy to get a good one with the +4 skills and the additional 10%, so that gives us a nice 40% per ailment consumed. And so yeah, definitely worth checking it out if you want to play some phys skills. I'm doing it with phys spells, but there's no reason you could. The Cyclone build I've seen is the only other like Fulcrum build that is out there. The Cyclone, well, I guess in the cast when stunned, but you could probably incorporate this into a Cyclone build and stack a few ailments and get some nice extra damage. You definitely don't need to go all the way to having 6 different ailments, but even just having 2 or 3 ailments with consistent uptime is a pretty substantial chunk of added damage on top of your damage. So yeah, very cool tech, very cool build, and had a lot of fun playing it, so worth checking out. And yeah, that's all. Thanks for watching.